Hello, everyone. So, hopefully, can you hear us very clearly? I'd like to introduce you to Kelly from Justice for Marilyn Manson.
Hello, how is everyone? Happy
And
Monday.
happy Monday. And
Yeah,
you know what? I normally hate Mondays, but you made this a very good one for me, girl. You really did. You did. Um, Thank you so much for being here. I know how busy you are because you've been everywhere the last few days on Instagram and Twitter with all of the news on
mm-hmm.
the new case filings in covering Marilyn Manson, as you have for even longer than I. And I, from the beginning, all the way back in 2021, when they first started making the investigation, and then when they came out with that February 2nd media blast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'll just put this out there right away. My first video was all about the 16 accusers, and it laid out all the
Really?
cases.
I did
And,
not
and
know
I'll just
that.
put that out. I'll put that out there, right? And then the very next video was like, damn, what did they do to Brian? Like, this is wrong. But the first one was all about this is everything they said, and it pieced together all the Instagram and all of this and that and who they were and all of that. So it looked like, and I do believe in victim voices. We'll put that, and I know
Oh,
you do
yeah,
too.
absolutely.
And we're not saying that nothing may have happened, but we are saying that like there's revisions of history going on here.
Mm-hmm.
That
I actually believed the women at first, but it was over the coming weeks with all of their media tour and that the red flag started to pop up for me.
mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, I totally,
You understanding that
yeah,
video,
exactly.
like I was in the same exact place. It was like, wow. I kind of like, and I think that's the point. We get hooked into that media onslaught right away, and we're like, oh my God, this is so horrible. Everything that could have happened. And then you start to look at it and you start matching up the dates, and like it's impossible for this to have happened if that happened. And like
Mm-hmm.
this one's saying this, but like how could that be if this was going on? And it's all
Right.
like the thing with social media is like everything's documented the whole time. And they seem to forget that all of their history is out there and everything
Yes,
that they've ever.
very, very much so.
Mhm.
Which, in terms of the truth, I'm glad that they did, were more transparent, but it's a little surprising, honestly, as far as hard as they came out the gate with the media tour and that sort of thing. And actually, what's more surprising to me is that the journalists didn't take 10, 20, 30 minutes to kind of look into this, because then you would see, well, wait a minute, these women have all been friends for a decade and all these different things,
Mhm. And
but
I
they
think
they
that's
did
something
not
that
do
does
that.
that's a point, a fair point that doesn't get brought up enough. That many of them claim they didn't know each other beforehand, and there's documented evidence they're in the same friend group and we're all hanging out with Marilyn Manson, Brian Warner around the same time. They were all interconnected. It was
Hmm.
and they, especially in the latest documentation, claiming several times didn't know this one, didn't know that one, and yet there's actual
Yeah,
communications that prove it. Like what? Like
right.
yeah.
And it's not even just us able to visibly see things. It's, actually in court evidence. Wait a minute, you guys have been conversing
Mm-hmm.
for
Month.
longer than you said you knew each other.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they also all say that they have these repressed memories, which
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to criticize, because I do know that repressed memories happen,
Mm-hmm.
but it seems typically they happen more in the younger sense, but it seems a little suspicious that all of these friends all were abused between, you know, summer 2010 to summer 2011. And
Mm-hmm.
then they all repressed the memory until a decade later. And this is where they contradict one another,
Mm-hmm.
because such and such a person reached out to me and such a person reached out to
Exactly.
me. It's like, well, wait a minute, you guys have been,
Mm-hmm.
you're well documented as being in the same friend group for many years, and not even just casually at LA events. I mean, these women were taking trips together. I don't travel internationally with people that I don't know very well.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. They were everywhere together. And I think that people miss the point in Brian Warner's countersuit, civil countersuit with him. It's about conspiracy and fraud, because what it does lay out is that at the time that they were making this documentary, let's just lay it right out there. Evan Rachel Wood's documentary from Phoenix Rising was the catalyst for this whole group of getting everybody together. When you're dealing with repressed memories, there's actual, from talking to people that are in psychiatry and therapies, just casual conversations. They said that this whole process of repressed memory, when you have a whole group of people talking about the same thing, to bring them all out, like there's a reason they're not entered as evidence this way. That it can be, you don't know which is actually your repressed memories coming forward and which are the influence, what we would call influenced by similarity or situational memory
Right.
coming forward. Now, they talked about all sitting together in a group. It was all documented very well in Phoenix Rising, to their chagrin, that that could be used now. Although that's been tossed out. We can't, Brian can't even use it as evidence as to what they did, like showing the little groups that they had, showing everybody being together, showing all of that. He can't even use that because they tossed the whole thing out as
They did. I think
yeah.
he did file a few screenshots
Hmm.
as evidence, and I can't recall whether or not that
Hmm.
was thrown out, but definitely Evan Rachel Wood filed the entire documentary as evidence, and that was the entire thing was thrown out, which
Hmm.
it happened around the same time as the anti-slapp motion, which definitely did not go in his favor,
Right.
but
Well, some of
it
it was still
it
in
wasn't a
there.
total onslaught, in my
Right.
opinion, against him, because of I really was more interested. Well, obviously, I was interested in the anti-slapp motion too, but what evidence she was permitting to come in
Hmm.
and not was very interesting to me. And really, I mean, pretty much everything that Evan Rachel Wood filed was thrown out. The only thing that wasn't thrown out was the other girls' lawsuits. But this is something that surprises me about them. And this is where I think they got a little sloppy with all of their lawsuits. If you line them all up, they
Hmm.
all say they all have like so many of the same threads and breadcrumbs that you
Hmm.
can tell there's some form of coordination, because how is it that all these women were repressed memories, but then boing, they all remembered the
Hmm.
same thing?
Yes.
Like it just
And
it
funny how that
defies logic.
all after talking to Ilmo Gore too, like
Hmm.
like not even Evan Rachel was, but like the actual interjection of Ilmo Gore is what really intrigued me the most, because this is not a person with a very good reputation. This is not a trustworthy person, known to be truthful, known
Like,
not
no.
to do things. She's been a manipulator and a grifter and who knows what else. A very creative person. I know some people are fans. I'm not one of them. Okay, but when you
Yeah.
introduce Ilma Gore to Evan Rachel Woods, and then all of a sudden you've got this big production documentary project, yeah, like
Yes.
easy target. Like, sorry, but like it's almost like Marilyn Manson was sitting there with a bullseye on him. Like, just there you
Yeah,
go.
he was. I mean, I think we can all agree that Marilyn Manson has made himself somewhat of an easy target just because of how
Hmm.
his whole career pretty much was. He's been kind of not embraced by the media. His
Hmm.
his image softened certainly as he aged, as happens. Once he got out of the 90s and the Antichrist superstar, he kind of
Hmm.
seemed to go be a little bit more generally accepted, but not, I mean, he's not. I'm going to use Johnny Depp as an example, because
Hmm.
Johnny Depp, everybody loves Johnny Depp. Marilyn Manson is dark and he wears black eyeliner. Ooh,
Yeah. So, like,
right, right.
like that. Are people not able to see that that's a character? Because, like,
Apparently not.
I mean, that was a way to.
I wear black eyeliner too, by the way.
Yeah. And you know what? And it doesn't make you anything else than a person who wears black eyeliner.
Exactly.
Um, it, it flabbergasts me. They're not able to separate the creator of art from the
Right.
person. Okay. Brian Warner's being accused of everybody's opinion on whether they like Marilyn Manson music, what he represents, whether they thought he was a Satanist, whether he thinks he has like edgy sexual preferences. his business. I mean, okay,
Right.
it only comes to when they start to say that things were done against their will. And this is where I have the issue, because let's just take a couple of, and you're probably going to laugh here because I know many of in the chat will. But when it comes to some of the lawsuits, like people who were in relationships for a year, says it was terrible and they were locked up, abused, this, that, the other thing, and then get on a plane and move to the country, back to England for a whole
Right.
year, never cut off content with them, and then fly back and live with them again a year later. What? Like,
Mm-hmm.
wait a minute. Like, what? I mean, it's before, like, unless he's got some kind of, like, he must be all that. That's all I got to say, Kelly, because his mind manipulation of people must be like on par with like the most genius person in the world. He must have some kind of like ability to make you look at the world in a whole different way, because for that to have happened, for all of that to have happened, and then her to get away for a year, never cut off contact, and then come back. And I don't want to doubt that anything that she regretted happened, because let's just face it, they're all talking about regretful situations in their life, but they're not taking the responsibility that they were there and it happened. Now, we're all young, we all do things, maybe that's not who they are now, but that doesn't mean that he forced you. Okay.
No.
That doesn't mean anything was done against your will. Maybe you look back at it now and go, how the hell did I do that? I mean,
Which is
yeah.
normal. All of us, I mean, as we grow up, because most of these women are in their young 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in their young 20s, was kind of had, not everybody, I should say, but a lot of people had, wilder, youthful days. And you think, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I did that. But you don't rewrite your history. You just, you learn from it and you amend to do differently.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
it's bizarre.
And I think it's just too common that all of us as humans look to blame someone else for the things that we, maybe they do have some part of it, but no one is ever 100% responsible for anything that happens to us or that we do. We all have some responsibility here in the way that they're handling it, which, by the way, was all, they came out with a media trial, tried to condemn him and ruin, and yes, they did, got him canceled from his contract. His PR people left, his record label canceled him, everything in the works for him stopped. He became person non grata everywhere. Like, that's it. He was done.
Mm-hmm.
Media trial, immediate, and he was canceled. Okay. Then, okay, but no civil lawsuits were filed at that time. Neither was there any criminal charges done. Even though in the beginning, I don't know about you, but in the beginning, I was looking at the investigation because there was supposedly claims being made on an investigation. This was when Elmer Gore was calling in the SWAT team to come to his house, like all of that stuff going on. My first videos on panel with Karma Valley, when I was just a circle icon like you were when you first came in, and all I had was an iPhone, and I had been looking at it, and we're looking at it going, there's nothing, like he's telling them there's nobody trapped in the house, nothing's going on. Like, who would do this? Like, obviously the media is responsible for a lot of the abuse that he had to put up with afterwards, because like people were just coming out of the woodwork to do stuff to him. And it this trial by media is so disheartening. It really made me look farther, and I hope it makes other people look farther. When the media organizes this well to make you believe something, stop questioning it. And I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but we need to remember that only the 1% of the world controls the media right now. The richest of the richest own those companies. We're not talking about individual journalists anymore. We're not talking about people that want to get the facts out. When we talk about mainstream media, we're talking about lining the pockets of the most rich with agendas, personal agendas that they are putting out there for themselves. Okay. Example, just look at what Elon Musk is doing with Twitter under the guise of freedom of speech and a free platform. That obviously only does what I want it to do. Like, this is Elon speaking, to promote my opinion about things and to get back at those people that I think are like causing me trouble or that I don't like from this, that, or the other thing. Like, it reeks of personal agenda. And even with these mainstream media, there's no true reporting going on anymore that I can see. Very, very few of them. Like I'm even disappointed in, like, we'll name some of the big ones. With Variety or the Rolling
Yeah.
Stone, Deadbeat. Okay, used to actually look at things and actually look for the other end of stuff and like throw those zingers in there to make you think and make you look further. What happened to that? Like, what are they hiring now? Just paid for play people that just take and regurgitate the information and try to put it in a sensational headline and slam somebody because that makes money. Because apparently people want to read the crap and not the facts anymore. And that's
Right.
very, very disheartening for me. And I know it must be for you too, based on
I
what
think
you've been
there's a
posting.
positive. I mean, I feel like there's a shift happening. I'm not saying it's done, because as we were talking about before we went live, and we were observing an attempt to cancel Russell Brand in this vein, but you can see people have a little bit more critical thinking about these things there than they did certainly in February of 2021. And I don't know if it's the Johnny Depp trial. I don't know if it's just burnout from the media, because they keep shipping these stories and trying to tell people what to think. And I feel like people rebel a bit, and they just get tired of it.
Yeah. They don't. Well, that's why I try to like straighten some of it out. Like go to the actual facts and just try to put it out there. I might be biased in my opinion about stuff, and I'll always say so. Like, I really think he's getting a raw deal. And currently, in what I am reading and what's going on with the investigation in Los Angeles, his ability not to get his own stuff back to defend himself accurately. Some of the motions that are made are just like the most trite, panicked, ridiculous looking things that I've ever seen. But before we even get to that, before we even get to that, which I know like we want to talk about Chloe Black, definitely, because that trial is in a week or so, like a week. We're going to go into that civil trial. Well, the first thing I want to straighten out, mostly for the people that watch my show and then talk in my chats, is that there are two Jane Doe cases. Okay, I've been getting a lot of DMs. There definitely are. The one in New York is the one that they put the Jane Doe as Bianco Elaine. That is separate from the one that we're going to be talking about mostly tonight, which is Chloe Black, which is coming out of Los Angeles, which was filed much later. Well, actually earlier, but it was quiet, right? It was filed actually in 2021, right? I believe?
Yes,
Well,
it was. But she
didn't.
She definitely didn't get the media attention that, say, Esme, Bianco, or certainly Evan Rachel Wood. I mean, Evan Rachel Wood was like the star of this whole thing.
Well,
everyone
she
else
spoke
just
for Me
seemed
Too
to
on
be
Congress, and she was the Me Too
right.
darling. And so, of course, if she mentioned the word abuse, like all cameras were on her. For sure.
Yes, yes. But, you know,
yeah.
So this one came up in May 2028, and initially it was dismissed. But it wasn't dismissed with prejudice. She was given the opportunity to make edits and refile. And so she did. And the edits were enough to grant her discovery and to move forward.
And I believe it was because of statute of limitations was one of the reasons it got tossed. And then when they brought in the repressed memories angle, of course, that is a way for statute of limitations to get extended if they can prove that there was some kind of process that happened that brought them. And of course, she stayed about talking with the others. Okay. But there's a lot of speculation here. Number one, she had an album coming out at the right time. Okay. She is one of the original February 2nd, 2021 claimants, all of that out there. She was right there with them, with all of her statements. But her interviews and things around that time kind of contradict each other as to why certain music was written, why the album is what it is, whether it's about what it is. Like, along with some of the other women, their own statements in the press and interviews that they've given contradict like what they're putting in the court filings.
One thing I'll say about to Marilyn Manson's credit is he is who he is, and these females they do tell more conflicting stories. And I get it, people change and you can change your opinions on things. But I with Chloe in particular or Jane, I kind of get the sense that she was kind of, she had her music thing going, but she kind of wanted to maybe jump on the bandwagon. Maybe she saw it as an opportunity. I don't know, but I kind of wonder if she was influenced a little bit by, we can say, Ilma or Evan, maybe kind of just going along with it. I don't know. And I really, honestly, I was expecting to head into the trial next week feeling like, gosh, and it certainly could still go any which way. But with the DA still holding on to his property that was seized well over a year ago at this point, coming up on 2 years with no charges, I thought, oh my gosh, is he going to be able to fairly defend himself, which is a logical concern because you want everybody to have a fair chance. And I say that for the other way for her too. If all of her property was seized, I would want her to have full access to her property from, communications from that time period, because they believe in a fair trial, or
Exactly.
as fair as it possibly can be. But it's not a good look to come out in motion and say, I don't want anybody to testify.
Yes.
What?
It does seem like, how is that supposed to be a fair trial? Number one, I can't access any, there's not even offering him a way to go there and get a copy of it. Even if he was willing to pay, I'm sure his lawyer could, they could make arrangements. They won't negotiate on any of it like that. First of all, the whole thing with the investigation, it's been open, ongoing for so long with no progress whatsoever for a very long time. Okay. And this seizing of all the equipment happened kind of later on. And they still will not give him access to anything. How is he supposed to defend himself? Number one. And she actually filed that she doesn't want, you're not going to believe this, everyone, but Chloe Black and her attorneys filed. They don't want Marilyn Manson, aka Brian Warren, to testify in his own civil court trial, that she filed against him. He's not allowed to defend himself.
She doesn't want. She doesn't want him testifying. And she made a claim, like a new claim, just a couple weeks ago. And so some of the witnesses that he's brought on are, of course, because when somebody makes a claim, of course, you should have anyway, the right to defend yourself at trial over it. So a couple of the add-on witnesses are really kind of relating to that claim. But still, it's just a blanket. I don't want anybody to testify. And in her attorney's defense, I get that they are just trying to best represent their client. And it's clear to me that their legal strategy is just trying to prevent as much testimony from reaching the ears of the jury as possible. Will they be successful? Who knows? But it's certainly odd, considering that she's the one who filed this lawsuit, that, she brought this on. It's not that she's having to defend herself, and she seems to be the one heading into trial with some hesitancy.
She doesn't want Paula Weiss to testify, even though there's claims in there that Paula was underage and did everything against her.
Yeah, and
she's not even allowed to even take this. They don't want her to take the stand.
Yeah, and for a while,
their lies.
For a while, she'd be like, you need to, she'd be demanding, you need to prove that the woman in this video was an adult. Okay, so here she is. She's willing to testify that she was an adult. No, we don't want her to testify. Her testimony is irrelevant.
But you see, that's what pick a side. How does a lawyer say that, for one, Kelly, right? How did a lawyer actually put that down and send that in? I'm just how do you say that to counter the accusation you've made, this witness is irrelevant, even though it's about that witness? Just to give you how ridiculous that motion was, here are the people she doesn't want you to hear from: Ashley Smithkline, Lindsay Yosrick, Chris Vrenna, Paula Weiss, Jody White, and Tony Chola, who were all there at the time that she says that she was with Marilyn Manson. So anybody that was actually around at the time that can counter one of the biggest claims that she says she was locked in a room that is soundproof with no windows and all of this, which Tony, Jody, and Lindsay can all say does not exist in that apartment. Like, what are you talking about? Doesn't it have to exist for you to have been put in there? And yet you still need proof that you were put in there. But how could you be put in there? Number one, if it doesn't exist. And number two, nobody else ever saw any of that. And everybody admits that Marilyn Manson's activities were not run in a vacuum. He had people around all the time. How much one-on-one did anyone get? One of those people is Ashley Walters. And actually, she has no problem with Ashley Walters, the actual who has actually been proven is non-factual over and over again, to the point that like her actual claims have been tossed
with prejudice.
With prejudice, they were so like unprovable. They were she can't even refile. She can't refile, and you know that's very rare. Okay, so but she wants her to come up and talk. I'm like, what?
I know, and I have to say I was a little surprised how few witnesses that Jane was bringing to trial with her. There's Ashley Walters,
and
Ruth. A few people.
Okay.
One of, I don't know how many siblings Chloe may have or Jane may have, but one of her sisters or a sister had come out with some kind of story, almost like another like Manson made a bad joke type of thing. So I thought, okay, well, her sister's name is going to be on the witness list, unless she's completely changed her first name or whatnot. And last name, I don't see it on there. So it's really surprising how few witness. If she is successful and none of Manson's side can testify, like that's it. Like she's not presenting much at trial.
I don't really see how she's going to be successful in suppressing witnesses, because her claim is that they didn't let us know in enough time, right? But they actually let them know a month ahead. Okay. So I think that's well within time, because like, how much time do they need? And also, they're the claims that they made. Okay. Do they actually need to know everything that everybody's going to say when you're the one making the claim? Like, the claim, your facts, like, Chloe and her lawyers. How do they get to say that he's not going to defend him? Like, he doesn't get to defend himself, because we don't know the exact words that these people are going to say. Like, she said, well, because he waited so long, I didn't actually do any affidavits on any other people involved. And here's my fair point on that, when I hope that you guys see where I'm coming from. It's not the responsibility of the defendant to tell you how to justify your claim. Okay. She knows who else could counter what she said. They should have those affidavits already and be prepared for what's going to come out in court. They don't need it to be coming from the plaintiff's side to do that, do they, Kelly? No. It really, it could have came from them. They know that they know Paula Weiss could come forward. Why don't they have an affidavit already on her? They're making the claim. Okay, why don't they have that affidavit? They don't need to wait to say, oh, well, Brian Warner's going to come forward and he's bringing Paula Weiss. No,
right.
Like, you can actually put them on the list too to prove your claim. But the reason you don't have them on there is because, they go the opposite way. And I know this is a legal game. They do back and forth. Like, let me just suppress everything I can over here, and just so my story stays pristine. Like, the less that you get to say about what I said, the better. And I get that. That's the legal game. But a month is plenty of time. Like, just because you had to jump through hoops or you didn't pay attention, it's like, I think it falls within the statute,
Right. And because Manson's team even said, by the way, if you need more time, we asked to delay this trial until next spring. And at first you were in agreement with us, then you were not. let's go back to, hey, let's delay the trial to next spring. If you need more time to get your witnesses and your cross examination together, but I don't think she wants that. I feel for her attorneys because she seems kind of like a lemon of a client.
Well, she does
truly
her own statements. She hasn't provided, or I don't know what she's talked to them about. But if Marilyn can find, Brian can find, and he did in his counterclaim, and all of this is available on Kelly's website. I'm going to actually just put this, drop that in the link here. When we talk about the legal documents and stuff, Kelly puts everything out on her Instagram, she's been doing quite a bit. That is her website. This is her Instagram, which there are quite a few short stories here that'll go into more detail about some of what we're talking about. And do I have her Twitter up? I will in a second. But all of these short little videos can actually give you the videos of the actual visual of what we're talking about here, right from the court cases. But Brian has entered into evidence now statements made by Chloe Black that actually contradict exactly what she's saying. Like, she's actually emailing him during the time that she is so abused and runs away and can't deal with him about, I want to be with you. I don't want to break up. I want to stay together, because apparently he was getting away from the relationship and actually begging to stay involved over and again. Actually, these contradictive claims to how she was so happy to get away and she this, that, and the other thing. They just go against it. Talking about how she remembered her abuse and wrote this song, but when she wrote the song, she said it wasn't. And it actually, there was an Instagram story recently from Marilyn Manson, Uncanceled, I believe, that kind of lays out her latest, her song that is probably what she says is the catalyst for all of this. And it's all about Marilyn Manson. But they make a pretty good argument to where it really looks like a story somebody else told in the little group instead of her own story. How do you feel about that, Kelly? Had you seen any of that? I was kind of blown away by that. That it's not a legal document, so I can't really say I 100% would go behind it, but they did make a pretty valid case on it. Because of the timing, because of her saying it's about this at this time, and then months later saying nope, it's about this. But saying she did not have there's controversy about when she actually brought forward her repressed memories. When exactly was that? Was it a couple of months before the album release? Was it after the album release? Did she write this song with the repressed memories or not? She keeps changing her story.
Yeah, multiple songs too, because she's written several about him. And later that year, she was at an event with him, and it wasn't even, oh, whoops, we ran into each other at an event. LA has, there's only so many events that can happen. It was his event. So, but I guess she was saying, well, I was under the guise of repressed memories. It doesn't really make much sense. And I feel like it'll be interesting to see what happens with her team, because these pre-trial documents that they're filing are not that encouraging on her part. And if I was somebody, say Evan Rachel Wood, I'd be a little nervous if I was Evan Rachel Wood right now, because Chloe is somebody that she, went to bat for and shared her story, and we'll see.
Yeah, it's definitely, it does look, I mean, I can't make heads or tails of it, actually. I'm going to put down what I'm talking about, Marilyn Manson Uncanceled, the way they laid it out. Ashley Waters versus Marilyn Manson is on there. That whole thing. They did this on September 17th. They just put like a whole big thing down there, and they're talking about Chloe Black and the music and her different stories and all. It's so like I do this every day. I read on different cases in trying to keep this with all of the different accusers and everything straight has been like difficult. Like I understand like people being confused about the two Jane Doe cases, but hopefully we have that straightened out for them. Well, the other thing I wanted to make note is how many of these cases, these civil cases that came forward, have been dismissed or settled or gone, like in some way, or
Right.
quite a few of them. And the one point that I don't think gets hammered home enough is if all of this was done, why isn't Evan Rachel Woods making a suit? Where is the claims besides the documentary that they made money on? Besides the media cancellation of Marilyn Manson, where is Miss I'm going to right all the wrongs civil lawsuit to prove it? You see, because everything that I see Evan Rachel Woods doing is just making the claims and not backing it up.
Right.
She's out here speaking on it. She's got a lot of political pull to people with that Me Too organization, in which started out as so good. And I was one of those that championed Evan Rachel Wood when she got legislation changed. Yes, I did. I was proud of her in that first video for getting legislation changed on statute of limitations, on how we handle rape crimes, on how you actually approach law enforcement in reporting your abuse. How that became more respectful, how we got better guidelines, how the need for making this from state to state more unified. It was all about the victims, and I championed that.
Yeah, I have no criticism of that.
None at all, right? And yet, here we are. But if you have these allegations, if this is true, Evan Rachel Woods, what actually are you doing for victims by doing it this way? That is my question. This is a smear campaign. How are we going to get victims to be believed when the status quo is let's just run a smear campaign? Let's be those people, because right's not right anymore. Like, you know the thing, two wrongs don't make a right? Didn't we all learn that when we were younger? Okay, did we not also, Rendell, if you get down in the mud and wrestle with the pigs, you get dirty? Okay,
yes.
So if you really have this valid point that this is wrong, that this is an awful man who is terrorizing people and making them do all these things, which apparently he's in a very loving relationship and his wife doesn't think so. But if that's who he is, okay, then why aren't you doing more to protect everybody? Where are your lawsuits? Where are the criminal charges? Where are the criminal charges? Okay, are you just using your clout for a smear campaign? You're doing it the easy way so that you benefit. So, like, forget this platforming that this is an advocate for victims. No, it's not. This is self-serving public relations campaign to promote Phoenix Rising. Period. And Omogora wears a lot. She bears a lot of the brunt of that. I'm sorry, because I think that, like, I could just see her pitching this to Evan. Like, I could just see the little campfire meeting they had, when she pitched this great idea, because, I'm sorry. That's like my personal opinion on it. There's no legal basis for that. Like, I didn't read it in a legal document, but I could just see that happening because there's no criminal charges in Evan Rachel Woods. No. All they've done is counter him back when Brian sued, rightly so. Okay, I don't think they wanted to come out, because look at what came out because of it. Brian exposed the fact that she lied with a fake FBI letter to cover up why she removed her child from mutual custody from one state to another. Yeah. To cover her tracks. Like, if you will do all of this, to
what won't you do? I mean, realistically, how can you take anything she files seriously in court, considering that she has already filed fake evidence, forged evidence in court? Forged federal evidence in court. It wasn't I doctored an Instagram post. No, she pretended to be a federal FBI agent using a real agent's name and another real agent's signature.
And
And
who both have given statements that, nope, there was no
mhm,
investigation that they were involved in.
yeah, and Ilma, I mean, Ilma, she's had her Photoshop projects, and we've seen her handiwork. Some of it is better than others, but I just that's an extreme length that I think most people would not go to.
Mm-hmm. There's a good question in the chat from James Sunderland. I want to thank you for all your comments in the chat and for keeping that conversation going there, because like you're spot on with a lot of these questions. And one that I have asked myself is, are these women actually ruining their careers in the process? Who's going to believe them after this? And
Hmm.
are they actually doing more damage for victims being able to come forward and make really legitimate claims in the proper manner? Or they're not
I
making it worse for everyone?
I hope. I think in Hollywood, in terms of the media, it would hurt, but I like to think, I hope in our normal communities, people would still try to support people when they came forward. But anytime you go to the media on this scale, I think people are going to look at it with a lot more skepticism than they really should have to begin with. And
Mhm,
so this is, how do we strike a balance? Because we don't want to undermine the benefits of the Me Too movement, which was really centered mostly around, look at the volume of people that are affected by abuse. And
mhm,
then we've got these Hollywood types that really just were like, no, 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 put the spotlight on me, put the spotlight on me, take it off of the general larger conversation that's going on and put it on me.
mhm.
And it's kind of, I mean, it's sad because there was a positive conversation going on. So I hate to think that there's something that will just completely be dismantled, but we all know that the pendulum in life swings both ways, but it typically falls somewhere in the middle. We just don't know what the middle will look like.
We would hope, and I am hoping that with this new onslaught of everything that's going on and the look at the Me Too movement, that those that are a little higher up in it can actually look at the damage that's being done by certain individuals with all of the clout. Like they wanted Hollywood involved because of certain cases, okay? But the damage that's being done and the actual reversal of their message that's happening, like it's very hard, like it's turning into something it wasn't meant to be, okay?
Right.
It's not believe whatever they say, no matter whatever they say, whenever they say. But what about the real vehicles for victims to come forward? Okay. And abuse victims are not normal starlets. They don't have mass media or press agents. They can't pick up a phone and get the media to listen to them to ruin their accuser's life. They need to use the court system. They need to talk to law enforcement. They need to do it the right way. So why not these? Why are we celebrating the way these people are doing it in the media when it is
Mhm.
not the way everybody else has to do it? It doesn't really help the situation at all. It is damaging it. It is making it so, like they say, believe all women. When you have an Amber Heard and an Evan Rachel Wood out there with nothing backing up anything they say, and I say that strongly here, you can come for me, YouTube, all you want, but I went
Mhm.
through that trial with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, and she couldn't back up a damn thing she said, not legally, not in
Nope.
court. She didn't have one witness come forward to back up what she said.
Nope.
Not one. Okay. So and here we are now with Evan Rachel Woods, who hasn't taken trial yet, but has not filed a claim, has not gone and reported anything to law enforcement, has not actually followed the protocols that she's basically has put in place, helped to put in place for everyone. So how does that help real victims? How that is
Mhm.
doing nothing but taking it away from them. Okay. And I don't even want to get into Russell Brand because that is just media by trial, instantaneous, whatever. He pissed somebody off and they're all going to take him down. He's not uh, he's not the most likable person, but does
Right.
anybody deserve that? I believe in legal injustice. That's why I do this. Like I like the
Yeah.
law. I love the law. I think the law's here to protect all of us. And I want to speak for victims. But when they do crap like this, they're not helping anybody. They're totally going against the legal system and they're totally discredit true legitimate victims out there. Now, their
Mhm.
stories could have something to it, but I say you don't get to believe because you make more money and you're a starlet and you can hire a press agent. Like, No.
There's a quote that, as somebody who has survived SA in Phoenix Rising, the quote that makes my blood boil the most, and I know we're not talking, we've gotten away from Jane, but Evan, towards the end of the documentary, says a statement like, we wanted to bring these women together and make a big splash so we could cut in line ahead of other people. Otherwise, without this, we'll just be waiting in line like we're at the DMV, hoping that somebody else, the police will get to us at some point. I'm like, so because you're a celebrity and you have the social status to be able to have a documentary that makes your claims of abuse more important than, say, Claire's, who doesn't, that's
Right.
just not fair.
It's totally not fair, and it does make it more difficult for those victims that have to handle it that way. It's just making the process even more cumbersome. I've got a member message here. I just want to put up real quick. Rocky Couch, sounds like this woman's attempt to silent witnesses is about as well thought out as my mallard duck gag order. Research. And I get that, and that was like a fake crime that we had on my channel. Well, it wasn't really fake because a duck apparently did die from aquatic ducking. It was a terrible thing. But they were all like playing around with it. But you're right. It's about as credible as that, I would say. You've got a fair point there. A definite fair point, Rocky Couch. And Sean Coffey wants to know if there is actual punishment for the false claims, especially in regards to the FBI letter.
I would say definitely not in LA County, which is a sad thing, but I would say definitely not.
We hear so much about LA County between Scientology and the legal and the actual political connections of some of these accusers. And I'm going to look at Evan Rachel Woods. It doesn't take much for you to draw the line between being able to speak in Congress and having all of these relationships with all of these politicians to why nothing's moving in LA County. They sent letters. Evan Rachel Woods put them on her Instagram. She was so proud of it.
Yeah.
That she got these people to try to investigate Brian Warner. She's the one who put it all out there. She's indicating all of these officials as to pushing for the investigation into Brian Warner. That is not producing anything.
One thing you'll notice is she's not doing that anymore. She's not throwing a fit over why have there been no criminal charges filed.
Because she doesn't want anybody to
know
that. Why are there no criminal charges? Well, we need criminal offenses and evidence to prove it to actually do those charges. Boo.
Yeah.
So,
Since Marilyn Manson to date has filed obviously much more evidence than Evan, but he has not even filed a fraction of what he has. So she must be nervous. If I was her, I would not be sleeping very well, but I have a conscience. I don't know if she does.
It's a very good question. It's a very, very, very good question, because I just don't understand. And they act like, we're all wrong because, first of all, we're craze fanatics, right? We just love the rock star. Like,
yeah, we're
groupies. We're just groupies. And I'm going to tell you, I get it all the time. People get mad at me. I was never a big fan of his music, but I respect his creativity to be able to do it. I'll always say that. Did I listen to it all the time? No, it wasn't my thing. Okay. Do I think he's a bit much? Yeah, sometimes, yeah, like some of the stuff, but just the same as Alice Cooper or Russell Brand or anybody else. I mean, I don't like Alex Jones either. He's allowed free speech. Like, just because he's not wearing black eyeliner and tights or running around half naked doesn't mean, like, you know what I mean? They have the same rights. You don't have to love the music to read these legal documents and see that somebody's getting slammed.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I mean, because Russell Brand, I don't know if there's any cases yet. I'm not a fan of his. I'm not. But when he was deplatformed, I'm like, now come on.
That
just because
yeah.
as a human, I feel like nobody should lose their income based off of nothing other than an allegation.
And they were so rude about it because let's be honest, okay? Russell Brand is quite the conspiratist and quite the controversial person, and may have even put out misinformation on his channel, which clearly could have gotten demonetized at any time. But they didn't do it for that. They used the creator behavior policy in YouTube, which is very rarely used and actually is about your off YouTube behavior. Okay, having nothing to do with what's on your channel. And they demonetized him basically because of these allegations, which again, I ask you, what were they thinking in mainstream media when they get all of these allegations? Not one civil suit. Nobody's filed a complaint criminally against Russell Brand. And they come out and they put all this in writing and they put it out there to ruin the man. That, wow, that's responsible, huh? Like how why, what are they thinking? It's all about money and perception. And I don't know who Russell pissed off, but he definitely pissed somebody off because they really organized this between the documentary that came out, which, by the way, if you have a documentary with real victims and you have to have actors portray their emotion, you don't even blur their face or use their words. You have an actors representing the claims of the alleged victims. Wow. Like, why isn't anybody speaking about that? When does that happen? Like, usually in documentaries, don't you see blurred voices, changed voices, blurred vision, whatever, names changed to protect the innocent? But you never really get an actor to come up there and say, like, this is how I felt. And like with the talk about dramatics, talk about pulling on your, trying to get the emotional impact to get everybody mad at Russell Brand. Like, they really went out to try to make us hate him, that he was so horrible, like with the teary eyes and the stuttering during the speaking and the whole thing. And it was all actors. It wasn't the victims. Like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah, exactly.
And then a large media, the Sunday Times in UK, coming out with the article with it, and then saying that they researched. I really kind of laughed when they said they researched it for years, but they didn't research it enough to know that, like, one of the victims, it actually happened while he was on Channel 4. Like, they actually implicated themselves to be a co-party to the shenanigans, since he actually was doing a show for them at the time. Yeah, it was kind of weird. Well, they didn't even put that in the article, though. You know.
No.
Yeah.
Did you watch his full documentary?
I did not. I couldn't get through it. I've seen like parts of it. The one that came out in the UK. No, I've only seen I've seen about 10-minute clips of it and stuff. That's about it. But I'd like to see the whole thing because it just looks like a whole frame up to me. The one thing I did notice is that there were actors. They weren't the real. They weren't the alleged victims. They weren't people coming forward in their own voice. And I know that there's no criminal suits, although now they're reporting that people are coming forward, not the ones that are making the claims. Let's make clear. The ones in the articles making the claims have not filed any civil or criminal charges or reported anything to law enforcement. However, other people are saying they've had problems with Russell Brand and they want to come forward. So we'll see where that goes. They're actually going the right way, like through law enforcement in the UK, which has no statute of limitations. They ask you to come forward. They don't have the same statute of limitations we hear. They have different laws, and they're actually putting out statements that they want anyone that had any interest to come forward and let them decide what they can do to go forward. And they want them all to have their voice. That was like a PSA that they put out recently. But again, we see the similar thing that what happened to Brian in February of 2021 is happening here to Russell. Is trial by media.
And one positive case that is not working in the accuser's favor is, I really am read up on the Nick Carter case. And this, I it was like right before the holidays last year. It was around December 8th, I believe. It was midnight. So late at night, I started watching this press conference accusing Nick Carter. I kid you not, I was up until like 2 a.m. Just I kept rewatching it because I just thought, like, did I hallucinate that? It just was really wild. It was a young woman who was claiming that she has multiple disabilities, which is very sad. But then they had an executive director of some nonprofit called Child USA come in and speak, and the whole thing was very, please come forward. If he's abused you, come forward, begging for, other people to come forward. And it has turned out in that case that she did not even meet him. Her claim is not even logistically possible. And her own friend testified she didn't even go to the Backstreet Boy concert. I did. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's wild. And he fortunately has not been dropped by his record label, but he's certainly lost promotional opportunities, which of course, a lot of times these artists survive on those because you don't really earn a lot from streaming.
Mm-hmm.
So your kind of commercial opportunities are where I think that and touring is where they earn the most money. So he's definitely taken the big financial hit, and it's a fascinating situation because in the scheme of things, he has been fighting very hard in court, but he hasn't been canceled on this scale of, I would say, look, Russell Brand, I had not heard his name in forever. And I
Mm-hmm.
could not believe how much of an onslaught there was against him.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why I think, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Manson situation, but I haven't looked into the allegations enough, and I don't want to say I'll play neutral because I've not done my proper research, and I think everybody should do their research. But I
Yeah.
also think the allegations are pretty fresh and raw,
Mm-hmm.
but if there's no case, then it truly is just trial by media because there's no case,
Exactly.
which is not
Really,
right.
yeah. And what struck me is that everyone who's in the articles and in the documentary, they in particular have not done any filings or anything like that nature. And that I'm like, well, some people say to me, well, Claire, of course, you don't know how hard it is to go through that. Like, you can't put yourself in their shoes. Why would they want to go through that? I'm like, they just told their story to mass media. It's out there. Every single one of us read it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what's the difference? I'm going to go and tell law enforcement, or I'm going to tell every single person on the planet. Hello?
Right.
Okay. If you were
You
worried
think it
about,
would be easier to go to law enforcement?
there's the chance there that you can at least be a Jane Doe. Keep it quiet
Right.
with the court. Keep your name out of the paper.
Yeah, because you don't have to file by name.
Exactly. So if that's the concern, like, because this is like, I don't know about you, Kelly, but I often get in my DMs, you're not really speaking for victims when you do this stuff. I go, yes, I am. Yes, I am. Because the
Mm-hmm.
way this was done is bad for victims, and no one could tell me otherwise. I don't
No,
think
yeah.
victims would say that. I don't think victims would be against what I just said. They would say that's right. How could they like put it all out there like that? And now, and that they're not following the process that we all have to follow. It's not that. Like, is this 15 minutes a
Yeah.
day? Like, it's
There's a nonprofit organization locally that I have donated to for many, many years. They support victims of abuse, and they don't even make their main address public. And they almost, when they help women get out of abusive situations, it's almost like these women are kind of in a witness protection type environment, like, because their abusers really will come after them. And I've heard such horrific stories.
Mhm.
These women aren't going to the media and that kind of thing. It just, and I get not every case is the same, but the way that the Russell Brand situation, it seems fishy to me. But definitely, I've done a ton of research into Manson,
Mhm.
And I have really, it would not be impossible, but it would take a lot for me to think, okay, well, these women, all of a sudden, these women, I feel like, are now telling the truth.
Yeah, I don't think their own statements, court filed alone, prove any truth. The
Mm-mm.
way things have been rescinded, the way things have been lined up to where certain parts of the stories match exactly, but then timelines don't. Like, he
Mm-hmm.
would, it's just not. There's just too much wrong there. There really is, and I don't want to say that they're not uncomfortable about things that happened, like whatever they're going, that's their personal story. But to drag it to the point that they have without the evidence is pretty rough. And it did look like they just wanted it all trial by media and it would all go
Mm-hmm.
away. Because until he fought back, they didn't do it.
Yeah, I don't know if they just assumed he would give a settlement.
I don't know if they even wanted a settlement. They just wanted him ruined and gone. They
Yeah,
wanted
because
that documentary to be successful.
in all of these cases, the women have really, they filed the cases, but then they really resisted complying with discovery. They really resisted going under oath for a deposition.
Mhm.
Um,
To the point where delaying them, using the same
yes.
lawyer, not getting a lawyer, filing over and over again for delays and this and that, saying that
Mm-hmm.
they were like being harassed. Here's the thing that really gets me. They say that they're harassed and they can't come forward, but they have no proof of any of this harassment at all. But
Mm-mm.
who does have proof of the harassment? The man whose email was hacked, the man who had
Mm-hmm.
false swatting calls placed on him, the man that had false letters produced that
Yeah.
said that he was under investigation. This man has the evidence of harassment and fraud and conspiracy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't see any of that in any of the other filings. Do you? For anybody else? Like, they don't have anything like that.
No,
Mm-mm. They don't.
no.
They can't produce an email that says Brian Warner was talking to me negatively during this time, which counteracts what I'm saying, like which proves that he was aggressive towards me. But he's got the emails that prove how lovey-dovey they all were with him, while he
Mm-hmm.
supposedly had them tied up in a room that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that is the thing about their allegations too, is they're not, they're so fantastical that they don't seem based in reality just on the surface from that. Because I've survived SA, a lot of women have, but
Mhm.
to go to the point of I was bound, I was um, whipped, I was held captive, I was starved, all of these things, and yet you're staying in touch with him, as you were talking about with Esme, going, okay, you met, these things happen, then you return to the UK,
Mhm.
and she was, I believe, even kind of still married when she first started. I mean, the whole thing is just,
It does. That one really got me because that was all. She admits that every time she got back with Brian or even had any relationship with him, it was all about promoting her for what she wanted to do. Okay,
mm-hmm,
and that, and also Ashley Smithline too. All about working on videos, promoting them, some way, some kind of financial deal with something. And and yet then they want to make all this. So is this sour grapes? I mean, I often think this, like, who would go
mm-hmm.
this far? Like, I guess, when you read the
Yeah.
emails that they've written, especially the one, let's just talk about Chloe Black, which I do have a question in the chat I would like to address. They want to know when the actual trial for Chloe Black's civil case will be. And I believe is it the 2nd or the 3rd of October? It's
It's currently set to begin on Tuesday of next week, and
Mhm.
it's not a trial that's going to be as long as Johnny Depp's. So I believe if all goes according to plan, it would be like what, maybe 3-4 days. So it's possible heading into the weekend there would be a
Right,
verdict,
right. So
mostly in part because she has so few witnesses.
she
And it'll
does.
be it'll be very short if Manson and his witnesses are not even allowed to testify. It
Yeah.
could be over in a day.
And based on the hours and all that they have, in which all of that is available, and I'll actually, since I'll put some more links down in the description afterwards for everybody to get ready. All of that's there, the witness list. She has one expert witness. Marilyn Manson wants to put forward 3. In he's got like 6, I think, witnesses to counteract her claims, and she has like 3 or 4. But 2 of hers are herself and Marilyn Manson, but now she doesn't want Manson to take the stand. Like, Brian's not allowed to talk for himself. Like, no. You're allowed to accuse him, but here in America, like, that's not going to fly. The judge is not going to let that go. I really don't believe, because
I hope not.
you cannot make an allegation against anybody, and they don't have the right to defend themselves. That's what our legal system is based on. That's what the whole fair trial thing is. You know?
Yeah, he's been, to his credit, he really has been a class act throughout this whole thing. He just came out and said, no, these claims against me are entirely false. And that's it. He hasn't gone out to the media bashing the women, which certainly would be his free speech to do so, because they've certainly exercised their free speech against him. He's really said nothing. So, you know, he's conducted himself very, very well. And so it's actually really interesting to see the women sort of melting down a bit, because they're the ones that were like, we've got all of this stuff, you know, he is the worst abuser ever.
And I really think they never thought it would go to trial, that it would never actually play out legally in a court of law, that everything would just fold up. I really think Evan Rachel Woods and Ilmo Gould thought that this whole thing would just play in for their documentary, and because of their clout and everything, he would be done and they would just move forward and nothing would get done. But then the lawsuits, okay? And now there's nothing like they can do, because the evidence that even Evan Rachel Woods is putting forward does not contest everything that Brian Warner is claiming she did. There's nothing to defend it there. And that's unfortunate, you know, for her. It's very unfortunate. If this actually makes it to trial, she should settle. She should put out a statement saying that things were twisted or whatever, and just give him money. But damage is done. He's not going to get that time back. Because another one of the questions in the chat is what's happening with with Marilyn Manson as the creator, Brian Warner as the man. What's happening with his tours in his music? Now, he's got new music coming out, thankfully. And he has been trying, you know. I think one of my even one of my streams, we celebrated his birthday. We showed there are still people supporting him. He still gets. But is his career at the peak that it was? Nope, it's not. It's not. And you know, but he is moving forward. He's been doing the best that he can. He just had New Hampshire. Can we talk about that for just a little bit? Because that was,
oh my gosh,
weird. Okay, so
that was,
the long and short of it that I understand is this has been on for a little while, because when the lawsuits were filed, we were all saying, well, you know, he's got this warrant in New Hampshire if he ever shows up. And I investigated that. But basically, it was a videographer who agreed to work for the Marilyn Manson tour. He was on tour at the time. And well, if you've been to a Marilyn Manson concert, like, front row is pretty risky at the least. There are body fluids, there are water, there is stuff. Like, he does stuff. Okay. This is a very physical concert. Like, you're just like, you're in it or you're not. You got to be prepared. So, videographer, I don't know if she knew who he was or not, but she took the gig. And apparently he shot a loogie at her or something. I don't know. Spit on her. It changed. First it was spit. Now it's a boogie. I don't know what it is, actually, to tell you the truth. But he pled. He said, yes, like, something did happen. Like, I'm sorry she's upset. And he got community service. He didn't, you know, they finally just addressed it, because it's been all in the papers everywhere that he can't go to New Hampshire without getting arrested. They made it like a big deal. He really, what, $1,400 fine or something like that? And
$1,200. I think they waived $200 for something, and then 20 hours of community service, which is really not that. It's a very light amount of community service.
And he gets to serve that in Los Angeles. And the only statement he did give while he was being berated in the
rehab.
Rehab. He will be dealing with some kind of community service with rehab, with people who've gone through rehab or rehab institutions. So I thought
Yeah.
that was commendable.
I
And
think that's beautiful.
yeah.
Beautiful.
But did you see all of the press on it? They're all like horrible. Like who don't like I'm like, oh my God. Like really people like
They're
sorry.
trying. They're
Mhm.
trying. This man has been defamed in the worst possible ways, accused of the worst possible things, and all they have is a little bit of spit that was flown at a camera lens and a little bit got onto the photographer. That is it.
He didn't curse at her. He didn't curse at her, manhandle her, do anything.
She
Okay.
wasn't in the soundproof room that
Mm-mm.
doesn't exist.
That doesn't exist. There wasn't even one backstage that's portable that he takes everywhere he goes,
Right.
apparently. Like, you think if he was this vile and he did all of this, that he would have one of those rooms with him everywhere he went. Like, because it seems to
Mm-hmm.
happen a lot, right, Kelly? I know I'm being facetious, but I can't help it. Everybody knows that's my snark. I can't. When it strikes me as that ridiculous, I gotta
Mm-hmm.
point and laugh at it. It is ridiculous, what she. And then here's the piece de resistance. That woman who filed that claim, that videographer, she's so upset that they didn't throw the book at him, that this is all they could do. She's filing a civil lawsuit for all of the
Mm-hmm.
mental abuse she's put herself through.
Yes.
Not him, because he hasn't had any contact with her. He hasn't done anything. But she's so upset about this event that it's ruined her life. It's ruined her life. And that
Mm-hmm.
kind of translates to me as I didn't get the money I thought I would for the 15 minutes of fame when I did all of this. It's not playing out the
Mm-hmm.
way I said, so let me just keep it going. Oh, well, let me file a civil lawsuit, because you know what civil means. I got a point to make, and some money will be exchanging hands, period. That's what a civil lawsuit is. Brian is
Yeah.
also making a point when he's suing Evan Rachel Woods for civilly. Okay. He's making a point. This is wrong. Okay. I don't think he
Mm-hmm.
cares about the money. I think he should care about the money. They ruined his career and they should pay. They should pay for what he lost. They really should. And
Mm-hmm.
when he could prove it with defamation, they have lied. But this isn't a defamation case. He's going for the conspiracy and fraud and what they really actually did with the hacking and the fraud and I don't blame them, because that's the actual criminal part of it. But I don't see LA looking into that. You know, I don't.
And that's I keep saying it's my new saying is that LA is, and now in my opinion it is Gotham City but with sunshine and palm trees,
Mhm,
because it just is so political there, and
mhm.
I know there's so much red tape that it's so difficult to get anything done in that county to begin with, but I just, with the nature of it being Hollywood, and I mean, what we've got HBO that did a documentary. We obviously have multiple actresses.
Mhm.
I the DA in LA is not very popular. His main platform publicly is abuse. Like,
Mhm.
that's his big spiel. He's not very popular. But one thing he stands up against is abuse. So I just don't see him clearing Manson, but I also don't see him charging the women,
Hmm.
which is, it's,
And that's unfortunate, because something should be done like that when you are obstructing justice, true justice,
mm-hmm,
the path for real victims. If that's your platform, just because they're so popular, like I would have more respect for a
mm-hmm,
politician that would take it on the chin and say, this is not going to be popular, but it's right.
right.
Who could not vote for that man? Seriously,
Exactly.
think about that. Why isn't that being done? Like, why don't they do that? They're so worried about popularity and this one and that. You know what? The real popularity is do the right thing. I'm going to stand behind you. And I think most humans, when they
Right.
have to vote
Have a
for right or wrong,
backbone.
are going to do it. Yeah.
Integrity comes through in waves. If you are somebody with integrity and you stand by your word, it really resonates with people. And the fact that he is not really showing much of a spine, you can
Mhm.
kind of see why people might not like him that much. And he's up for re-election in 2024, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. But
Mhm.
I I don't see him clearing Manson. I don't see him releasing his property, and I don't see him doing anything with women. Of course, I could be wrong. Maybe he's waiting to get through this trial. Who knows? Who
I
knows?
don't know. Maybe, but it does seem like popular opinion is actually turning against him, and the spotlight is on the LAPD. Sorry, LA is got a lot on them based on Masterson. Everything's going on here with Brent. A lot of that happened in Los Angeles also, and now this, hey, how tight? This is the question I would like to pull forward. We need to start looking at how integrated LA County and DC is in that Me Too movement all the way up. How much of this is actually pay for play? I would like to put that out there. I know I'm being an asshole, people, but I admit it when I am the biggest asshole out there. I am going to ask that question because we need to look at that. Because now it's 3, 4, 5. How many of these cases do we have to look at like this? And that is all trial by media first. And where is the criminal investigation afterwards? Where? And why are these politicians getting voted in? Why are these law enforcement officials getting promoted up when there are no criminal charges? This is pay for play in the worst possible way. And coming from New Jersey, I think I know what pay for play looks like. I'll just say that.
Yes.
Okay. I think on the East Coast here, we've had a problem with that all along. And it just reeks. I'm smelling it all the way from LA right here in my room. Okay.
Right.
I'll just say, I know I'm making a joke out of it, but it's serious. I want to start looking at that because these are the questions we have to ask. I want to believe victims, but this doesn't look like victims. It looks like media. This is trial by media, and it doesn't benefit victims ever. It's taking away from the real issue. Okay, it's seriously damaging the real issues and concerns that we have in how we get to report as a victim, how you get to go forward the process, how you are protected, when you get your justice, how you get your justice. It is damaging that. And I need us all to start looking at the officials that are allowing that to happen. Because that's the only way we're going to stop it. Always Creative brings forward, she said, back to New Hampshire and the videographer. I did read that, and I do believe that that's true. That Brian Warner does have an implement under his Marilyn Manson that when you work for him, there is the risk of being touched, cursed at, explicit acts during the course, because he does. He they look at fellatio and all of this and master like sex, like they actually perform like fake sex acts on stage. All of this and bodily fluids you could be exposed to while you sweat, spit, do whatever. Yes, that is in the contracts. I do believe reading that. I read that, Always Grateful, but I did not read the actual court document. I don't know if that came up, but I know that's there. And that would be one of the reasons why it kind of is a civil case. Nothing criminal happened. She couldn't file any criminal assault or like she was violated in any way criminally because of that.
Well, she did file criminal charges, but that's what he only got 20 hours of community solace. It was such a minor misdemeanor because there's different tiers, and it was probably one of, if not the lowest tier of a misdemeanor. And
I want to see if that contract comes into play if she does file that civil suit. Because I think a jury would want to know about that.
Yeah, she filed her civil suit. It's a waste of everybody's time. So I hope she just drops it. That would be the best thing for everybody. But it was initially dismissed from LA County, but then her attorneys said the reason that it was just, it was dismissed because neither party showed up for a hearing that was scheduled for February. And apparently there was a clerical error. So the court never notified them. So they reopened the case. And then there was a hearing set for July of this summer, which she delayed, which I know is not the best look necessarily, but I'm going to give her some grace and say maybe she did that to, get through this criminal stuff first. But we'll see where that goes. I think there's a hearing for that case sometime in October. But how much damages could she really be asking for?
Exactly. And especially if a piece of paper, a waiver, or a contract of that nature exists, that's very damning. But also just the
Hmm.
nature of the contracts, if you know who you're working for.
Yeah.
Hello? Hello? You signed on to be the videographer for Marilyn. You were gonna see some stuff,
Yeah.
lady. Like
Yeah.
you were gonna see something that might upset you. Like, because everything is meant to be edgy and all of that and more, and push
Hmm.
the envelope. His whole
Yeah.
thing is
It's
to
not an
push the
Adele
envelope.
concert. Yeah.
Exactly. So you don't go in there with your, like, your moral high horse and say, I am so damn offended by working for you. You like rock, but like you ruined my life. Like I can't even, like, no,
Right.
you don't, like, know who you're working for. Like, know who you're working for here. Like, nobody could say that he doesn't push the envelope on everything.
Right.
And he does it on purpose, and he doesn't make no bones about it. And it is the character, people.
Hmm.
Because other thing I want to note, one thing that struck me that Evan Rachel Wood said a long time ago was, I'm dating the man, Brian. Marilyn Manson is what I was attracted to. The lifestyle. I was a young girl. The lifestyle, the edge, the darkness. But I dated
Hmm.
the man, Brian. And she said, Brian Warner would never hurt a fly.
Yeah.
He is not Marilyn Manson.
Hmm.
She said, I will bring him to my grandmother, my mother, like anybody. They love him. Brian Warner is not Marilyn Manson. She said that. Brian Warner
Hmm.
would never hurt a fly. Hmm.
Yeah.
I don't believe he was holding a knife to her throat when she said it either. It was kind of public, and he wasn't anywhere around when she said it. She was free
No, I mean,
doing interviews.
she went out of her way to talk about him
Hmm. So have
since they
many other
split.
actresses. How did you feel about Rose McGowan coming up after Russell Brown's statements and saying, listen, like, he might be rotten, he might be an awful character, but this is not the way to do it. Actually, a
Hmm.
clear voice for victims, a true victim advocate, saying you can't do it like this. If you're supporting victims, you're ruining how we have to proceed.
Hmm. I have a
Thank
lot of respect for Rose.
So do
And, it's like, do I agree with 100% everything she says or does? No. But
I.
I overall have a lot of respect for her because she's honest. She speaks her mind. She hasn't made up anything. And she's also really, she got her justice and put out her book, which was a great book, by the way. And she had a full chapter on Manson where she says that Manson helped her heal from abuse, not be abused. And
Exactly.
her entire book is about abuse from childhood all the way up to, present day, and different figures that she'd seen in Hollywood and that kind of thing. The only male figure mentioned in her book that isn't an abuser is Manson.
Right. And that speaks volumes, because
Hmm.
he's being accused of actually taking the vulnerable and continuing that abuse in many of these cases. And she speaks volumes to know that wasn't the case. Did he help her recognize it? Yes. Did he help her
Hmm.
recognize how she was playing into it in certain things, even in her relationship with him?
Hmm.
Yes. And a man who can do that,
Yeah.
listen, that spoke volumes. I read all of Brian Warner's books too, The Good and the
Hmm.
Bad. In what he says, where he got some of his fetish ideas, some of his things, some of his woke perceptions on how relationships are, but that all turned around. Like, you got to keep reading. You gotta
Hmm.
learn more about them. I realize that these are books for sale, that they're putting out what they want us to read. But when I see Rose, I believe her when she said that,
Yeah.
based on all the other things that she's gone through. And that's, like you, that struck volumes to me, that the only one that she says didn't abuse her was Brian.
Another man. Yeah.
And if that's true, then how could all this other be? If that's the man, and if Evan Rachel Woods is making statements like Brian Warner is not Marilyn Manson, then
Yeah.
that man would never, Brian Warner, the man, would never hurt a fly. Is he quite?
Yeah.
He's not the character, but the media is trying him by character,
Big
by
time.
Marilyn Manson, by the creator, by the art. that they don't understand or they don't like or they don't appreciate. And so most of the things that these women say happened are all part of the acts and the videos that he's put out. I'd like to point that out. Read the accusations. You can see them playing out as art in what he did. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to say that the art predicted life, but then the rooms that they say they happened in never existed. And the people that were around at the time say that couldn't have happened, because how do you like keep somebody locked up for days on end when they saw them day in and day out there? Like, we're talking about like management being in and out and all of his PR people and all the people that were just hanging there at the time.
Yeah,
Like,
and I'm pretty sure they've said that this soundproof room had like glass too, so it's not even like, oh, you were in a panic room.
mm-hmm,
And this is an apartment. This isn't even like a mega mansion. At the time, Manson was very much like living under beneath his means as a rock star and kind of a crummy, rundown part of town above
mm-hmm,
a liquor store, not exactly a mega mansion or a major penthouse like Johnny Depp had at his
mm-hmm,
trial.
exactly.
So if there's people in and out of your apartment all day, you would notice if somebody was locked in a glass soundproof room.
Mm-hmm,
Like, it defies logic, and it really speaks to me of how much I feel like these women expected not for their claims to be scrutinized
mm-hmm.
in any way. And that's really shocking.
And it is because of the movement that is behind them that says believe all women just from what they say. And there is a lot of powerful people in that movement. They give you a lawyer, they give you public relations people, they have everyone involved in politics with it. It's a very big, huge, strong movement that I'm not saying didn't do some good. It did. But now it's being turned into a catalyst to destroy people's lives, irregardless of the legal system here. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just not right. And that's my biggest complaint, is that it's like do as I say, not as I do. And
Mm-hmm.
that's never the right thing. That's never the right thing. They are not helping the real victims, the majority of victims, I should say. Real is not the right word. I don't want to say that no one has an actual claim. I'm saying they haven't filed one.
Right,
That
right.
I'll say, okay? I won't say that they don't believe some of what they're saying. They may feel wrong in some way, but is it what it is? And how can you prove it? Like, you still have to. You don't get your justice this way. This is not justice. This is vigilantes. This is what we're supposed to force. We're supposed to
Mm-hmm.
go against, right? Like it's just not the right way to approach it. And I want to see more of the actual victim advocates like Rose McGowan who spoke up. I want to see more people actually speaking up. No one really spoke up like that for Marilyn Manson, though. And although
No.
some of his other relationships did say that's false, it can't be, that's not the man I know. I don't know where they were, but that's
Right.
him. Okay, they did. But hopefully they're actually trying to be zipped and not be able to testify. Like Lindsay is not, they don't want Lindsay testifying. They don't want others testifying. They don't want the people who retracted, like Ashley Smithkline, who says, you know what? I was coerced. Now that I
Mm-hmm.
think about it, I didn't feel like this until I talked to them. And, I talked to them a lot. And like, maybe I was confused. Now, she's not saying people twisted her words or whatever. She's saying she actively participated. Now, when somebody
Mm-hmm.
comes forward and says, I actively participated in a slamming campaign against a man, and then they're not allowed to testify, I don't know. There's something wrong there. There's something wrong. They
Yeah.
wouldn't even let her affidavit in the civil suit with Evan Rachel Wood. And I'm really upset about that because,
Yeah. I mean, it'll come in. It will. There was a stay in the case because
Mhm.
the judge in the LA case, she seemed overwhelmed. In fact, she even said, I've never seen this much evidence and this many evidentiary objections. So it came in at a time where there was a stay. So it'll come in after once the case reopens, but he's appealing, I guess, the anti-slapp.
Yeah,
But
which makes
You
it even
know,
more of a delay, because I don't blame them for appealing it, because there are parts of that documentary that actually show their statements and what they were saying against him that was false,
mhm.
that he could prove is false. And so you actually have to show that they did it to prove that, like, it wasn't true, um,
Yeah.
for the conspiracy part. And so I do.
It takes a lot of guts to do what Smithkline has done. And, you know, she was going through some tough times last year, as I feel like everybody had a rough 2022, you know. So she had a full plate as it was, but
Mhm,
this was truly eating her alive.
mhm.
And
And
she's
it was showing in
so
her interviews, like that
mhm,
last interview she did with her attorney, where
mhm.
she looked totally out of it. Do you remember? Like, and then
Yeah.
right after that, we found out she had the same attorney as Esme,
Yeah. I mean, she
and
said
she felt
during
they
that
weren't
interview, dur-
helping her. Yeah.
yeah, during that interview, she said that they had her kind of drugged or like encouraged her to take Xanax or something, but then that he had his hand like firmly on her leg. And I guess this is speculation because we couldn't see it, but that she felt like she was almost like a hostage type
Mhm.
thing. And that's honestly kind of how it comes across when you watch the interview. It doesn't come off as a very relaxed conversation from either of them. They both seem very tense,
They did.
but
He didn't seem at ease at all. He was worried about what she would say. You could see it. And I remember the
mhm,
commentary afterward from several different sources saying that it was quite, but he had a lot
mhm,
to worry about too, because he was making statements for her in court that she didn't agree with. She was like available for affidavits. They were saying she wasn't, saying she was out of the country when she was in the country. And
mhm,
she's making some pretty heavy accusations against the lawyer, especially saying that he wasn't representing her. He was more worried about the Esme Bianco case and how she could support it, not
mhm.
necessarily her case. And that's all a little sketchy. And now it could go either way. It's just her words. But then for people to just totally discount it, she's allowed to change her mind. If she feels that she was coerced, that they're not taking care of her, I mean, maybe they should have taken care of her a little bit better if they expected her to go
Mhm.
along with the plan as well as it was, because when the pressure does get hot, and it was on all of those bringing the cases, they now have to prove their cases, and they're scrambling. All of them are
Right.
scrambling to do it. You should have took better care. And everyone likes to toss up the fact that Esme Bianco got a settlement. In I don't know, Kelly, do you have anything to say about that? I do have a point of view on that one as to why that settlement happened. Well,
Well, I definitely know it was financially driven, and just he had so many cases at the time that it just it's unfortunate that, so to speak, if Smithline had testified just a little bit sooner, that probably would not have happened,
mhm.
the settlement. But and I knew from conversations with her that she was gearing up towards what she's done. But I always thought the best thing was not to interfere.
Mhm.
And I always thought I don't want to like push her in any way, because the best thing for Manson is if she goes through the proper channels,
Right. And
not, go through testifying and that kind of thing, rather than hopping on The View again or
mhm.
these different things, like going through the proper channels and withdrawing her case and then filing her testimony. And so it was a process because she was going through some other stuff. But in the end, I think that's probably got to make Esme Bianco thrilled.
Mhm.
And from what I hear, she's a real peach.
She
So,
is. Well, I will say she has her lawyer before this one, the ones that with the original filing. I actually have just a little bit more to add to that as to why they may settled. When I look at it legally, remember in Esme Bianco's case, is that not the one where they said for immigration purposes why she was brought over, and that some of the forms may have been filled out erroneously?
potentially. Yeah.
Potentially. there's more risk there than the allegations about abuse as far as payout there, because that could have led, should they have gone to trial and that would have been proved, that could have led to some serious immigration issues with
Mm-hmm.
Marilyn Manson, and some filing and some actual legal ramifications. So it may have been in the best interest to leave all that, because not that they did anything intentionally wrong. They're using the system the way it's like set up to be used. He was bringing you over to work on something, and so you fill it out that way, you know. And then when
Mm-hmm.
that didn't come through, if they didn't like dot all the I's and cross all the T's, there was, I saw it as great risk there. Of that whole case,
Mm-hmm.
that stuck out to me as the biggest risk that he could lose right there. Only for form and process. Not that he
Right.
intentionally did anything wrong, but because the immigration process is so legal, and dot your I's, cross your T's, or you're getting in trouble. That was the biggest potential for risk there. And so I think if I was the lawyer or the paralegal or anybody over there with a bug in the ear, I'd be saying, yeah, like, we need to make that part go away. Like that could have some ramifications. Like that's a little messy.
But her case,
Seriously.
I mean, it got ridiculous because speaking of the hard drive thing, her I was human trafficked thing is a really big catalyst as to why his home was raided, that kind of thing. And she filed a criminal case and then like 2 months later filed a civil case. And there's a mandatory rule, which makes perfect sense, that obviously the criminal case is going to take precedent to the civil case. So they get to discovery and she says, I want this, this, and this, and this, and this from Manson, but he can't comply because his stuff was seized. And so that was something that was going on. But then her case had turned into bickering about the Deftones. I mean, she filed
Mhm.
3 amended lawsuits.
Right. But because she saw the
3.
legal aspect of, here's how he damaged my career, and this is what I'm really mad about. Like it was no longer about abuse, right? It was no
Yeah,
longer
it just
about you treated me.
morphed.
It was more like, you promised to make me X amount of money and you didn't. Basically, like for
Mm-hmm.
all the rest of the amendments, right? It's like you interfered with this contract, you did this, you did that. Like, I should have been like, I came and I stayed with you and I did all of this and I didn't get my payday. Basically, is what it
Mm-hmm.
turned out to be. Which took a lot of credit. Like it should have been settled, definitely, because I don't want to see him go out the money, because obviously with everything else that happened in his career, he's losing money anyway. But
Mm-hmm.
for both parties, I don't think she had that much of a leg to stand on. Most of her case was going to get dismissed anyway. But
Mm-hmm.
he had some risk there as far as legalities with some of the little areas. Not that I'm not saying he did anything wrong. I'm saying like you
Right.
got to be so careful with these particular issues to cross your eyes and to dot your I's and cross your T's, that the risk is there. The risk is
Mm-hmm.
there because of the process, legal
Right.
contracts, immigration. She, whatever she paid her lawyer, it was pretty well worth it, because they had all the keywords there to try to finagle that settlement, which could have been the goal all along. Besides ruining his career with, for Evan Rachel Woods for whatever reason. I don't know.
Yeah. And her attorney, I'm not sure. I kind of feel he was paid through Time's Up, the
Mhm,
organization, because he was in their annual report and that kind of thing.
mhm.
So I kind of feel like he was a Time's Up attorney. But it's interesting, if you look up his other cases that he represents, he really doesn't represent a lot of SA cases.
Mm-mm.
So it's pretty odd to me how they even ended up working together,
But
because
look
he
at the case
focuses more
though.
on like workers' rights. Maybe that's how he got involved, I
That's how
guess.
Esme Bianco, because of the angle she
Hmm.
took with the
Yeah.
immigration and with the violation of contracts and blah blah blah. Oh,
Yeah.
and by the way, I stayed at his house and I cooked and I cleaned and I worked as a personal assistant, but I didn't get paid. Huh?
Yeah, I was in
Okay.
voluntary
I was
servitude.
on voluntary service, which is against immigration. Like he brought me over here to pay me to be a maid, and he didn't pay me, like, or something like that. I'm not saying that's what she said. I'm saying like that's how ridiculous
Yeah.
it is.
Hmm.
But you know what I mean? Like, so you see the risk there. That case in particular, that's why that got settled, because of those kinds of things, because that is the kind of attorney it was. More workers' rights. You're right. Like bingo, Kelly. We were on the same page and we didn't even
Right.
know it.
Yeah.
Look at that. Well, it just, that's what struck out memory. And so I wasn't surprised that that one got settled. And I was actually happy that that was off the table, because I looked at that to be the biggest problem. I didn't even look at Evan Rachel Wood's, this case here, as the biggest problem. I looked at that one as having the most severe long-term consequences for him, as far as legally being tied up in and maybe losing some points in court because of those issues of, dotting I's and crossing T's and things he could not have been in control of. You go to somebody to do an immigration policy process, and you're trusting them to handle it appropriately. Okay. And you're talking to your love interest and saying, I'm going to bring you over here, but and for immigration and everything, we're not getting married, because wasn't she already in a relationship or married or something? Like, they couldn't do it like how some people do it. So she's coming over here and she wants to stay, and he's just trying to make a way that she can stay, because that's the other thing. They went through all. Tell me this is not like crazy. They went through all this process in the immigration to make sure that she could stay. Well,
Right.
she didn't want to stay. She was being held against her will. Awful things were happening to her on a daily basis, and all she had to do is not go to the immigration to get permission to stay, and she could have been out of it. What? Like, I know that during the process of abuse or whatever, like, the mind is different, but come on, there was a way out, and she definitely didn't need to come back.
I mean, how afraid though was she though? Because
She
broke up. They broke up. She's still friends with Ashley Walters, who's still employed as his personal assistant. They take out his car in that drunken joyride, crash it. If I was so afraid of somebody, first of all, I wouldn't be going on a joyride with any recent ex-boyfriend in his car anyway. Especially if it was a breakup that I felt was a positive one. None of these women really acted like they were afraid of him for many, many years. They went to his concerts. They went to his events. They posted flashback photos on their Instagram. And then the Me Too movement arrives, and all of a sudden, repressed memories come flooding back.
And here's the thing. It's not even all of a sudden when Me Too comes, because that was years before. It's all of a sudden Evan Rachel Wood wants to do a documentary. Is the catalyst, in my opinion. But you're right, because let's just loop that around. Like, what people aren't actually seeing, or I don't see them talking about as much, is how well all of these women were connected. And so if this abuse was going on, it's not like there weren't other women right there that could have helped them and got out of it. And all it took was a nod from, let's just say, that car ride, Esme to Ashley, to say, I don't want to go back. I don't like what's going on. They could have gotten that car and just left.
Right.
They would have looked, because Ashley says she was being abused at the same time. And Esme says, while that's going on, she is too. So all it took was victim to victim, look at each other, get the strength, and book. It's not like they were, my point being, they weren't alone. They weren't isolated. They had all these people around them. Okay. So unless he's a mind control freak that we don't know about, he's got like these telekinetic properties that, like, superpowers that we don't know. Like,
well, he's the Antichrist.
Apparently, because like, he's superhuman, that he could control every physical movement and mental thought that they had the whole time he was in a relationship with them. I'm gobsmacked. Like, you know what? I am a Marilyn Manson fan now, Kelly. I seriously am, because that's intriguing. That how he could do that, I don't know. But you see, they were around Ashley Waters. All of these women knew each other. They all were around each other at the time. They're all partying together. They're all doing like all of they weren't isolated. It wasn't the normal for that type of abuse to be happening it wasn't the normal isolation that should have
Mm-hmm.
should have been. I don't want to say normal, like that's a wrong word. I don't have the right words to say. It doesn't fit the patterns from what I have learned from talking to therapists and psychologists and those that work with victim advocacy on a pattern of isolation that should have been there for
Right.
these horrendous things that they're saying happened to happen. Okay, that they felt like they had no control and they couldn't do anything about it. There had to be some type of isolation there that I don't see happening in most of these relationships. Didn't they all stay involved with their families at the time, especially Evan Rachel Wood and Rose McGowan and everybody? Wasn't he involved with all of their families and how
Mm-hmm.
much that the families loved him too?
Yeah.
So where was the isolation to do this kind of mental and physical abuse to somebody? Like I'm missing it. And I don't want to say that doesn't, like, it does make me doubt their statements. I'll have to say that, like, because they're not coming forward with anything that just proves it for me. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's what the LA is facing also. They cannot come up with anything to charge him with. They
And
need
they
to.
would clearly love to charge him with something.
Wouldn't that be in their best interest
They
at
would
this point?
love to charge him. That DA would be, I'm getting this boogeyman off the streets. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they would love, they're probably just combing through everything. What is there anything we can charge this guy with?
Mm-hmm.
And we've not seen any charges.
We have it, and you're right. That would be in their best interest, especially with everybody looking at LA County right now, going like, "What are you doing? You got all these letters from politicians to open an investigation. What are you actually doing? And why are you spending our money if you're not doing anything? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
are you doing? Where's the case? What's going on?" It's not unusual for investigations to stay silent for a long period of time, but they're
Mm-hmm.
claiming that these investigations started in 2017 and 2019. Some of them,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So where is all of the conclusions on those? Like where is the statuses on those? Like why are we not like getting
Yeah,
any?
and these aren't like the human trafficking and the pedophilia claim. They're not gonna sit on, okay, we seized this guy's devices and we found all this evidence of child porn, and now for 2 years we're not gonna catch him. I have a friend who is no longer a friend because he was caught, chatting with young girls. And from the time of his, outreach, and he was talking really with a police officer, to the time of his arrest was about maybe a month.
Wow.
And he's just an average citizen, let alone, this big international celebrity,
And
which would be great PR for their department to
mhm.
charge him.
And we see those cases every day. Like there was just one with a man who had terabytes of child porn on his computer, and it's discovered immediately. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like you get locked up, and then you got to prove you're innocent. I'm sorry, like they don't have anything on Marilyn Manson, or he would be locked up
Mm-hmm.
right now. Okay, on this, and so and the fact that they try to get him not to defend himself against such horrendous claims of pedophilia and things like that really speaks volumes. Really speaks volumes. Like he's
Mm-hmm.
not like, you're allowed to say that I had sex with a minor, but I'm not allowed to put the person on stage or put the person
I'm
in
not
the.
allowed to sit on a stand under oath, like at my trial.
They
It's
cannot take that
crazy.
right away. I don't see how they're going to be able to take that right away, and how they can actually, unless they can't bring a claim and not have it countered. So unless they're going to toss out the claim, they can't toss out the witnesses. I don't see how.
Right.
I really don't see how. And I don't think even if they toss out those claims, how they can prevent him from deciding to take the witness stand in his own defense and say whatever he wants about whatever he wants.
Mm-hmm.
That's his right. Here in America, you get to do that. Like, you don't get to file a charge against a civil suit against somebody and they don't get to counter it. They don't get to speak for themselves. Defendant gets to defend themselves, a right to face their accuser.
Right.
Okay. I just don't get it. there was a comment earlier about when we were talking about the videographer, like,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
instead of making the actual civil suit, like, couldn't she just get her dry cleaning bill paid and just like walk away? Like, what is this really all about? Like, I don't get it.
I know.
It's like crazy. But now I've got people in my DMs too saying we really should look at that videographer because she may have tried to do it to other famous people. She may have.
That's true. That's a very good point.
Yeah, she may have done like I have to look into it. I don't have anything to back it up, but they, they're tossing names out there.
I catch things immediately, and so because I've read her lawsuit. It's been a minute since I had read it. I didn't like read it ahead of the court hearing last week. I didn't reread it, but I reread it afterwards, and I thought, oh, okay, so at the hearing she was not there, but she gave her statement to a victim advocate to read at the podium, and within her statement she says, I've worked in the music industry for 30 years. And I think, okay, your lawsuit says 20 years, your lawsuit was just filed, so which is it? That's a pretty big disparity for me, in my opinion. But if you've worked in the music industry for 30 years, you've never seen a concert pit and know how, like,
and you haven't heard of Marilyn Manson and his aunt, and you chose to work for him. Like, he didn't force her to take the contract. Let's just say that right out.
No.
As far as we know, he did not blackmail her into being the videographer.
No, she's not said she was an indentured servant.
And she didn't go through immigration erroneously or anything like that. Nope. And basically she's just upset about some spit, which,
Yeah, and like I feel like spit it's not pleasant. I don't like spit. I don't think anybody would want to have some spray on you. But think about how many times you've talked to somebody and that saying, like, say it, don't spray it, and stuff just gets on you. What are we all supposed to just start suing those people?
And let's be clear. Do we really think he was spitting at her or the camera? She was the videographer.
Yeah.
He was doing it for effect. Why is that not being talked about? Why is that not like the reason the whole thing didn't get caught out? Hey, in the course of being dramatic for the video that you're actually filming for me, I spit at the camera and you got wet. Oh, my. Like, and how did you think that wouldn't happen? Like, this little tiny part of this whole scenario, this New Hampshire thing, probably irks me more than so much of it because it's so petty. It's such a petty grabbing for, like, oh, wow, everybody hates Marilyn Manson. Like, he's the target right now. Let me just pile on for my 15 minutes and maybe I'll get a new camera out of the deal. Or like, maybe I could buy that new car. Like this is my moment. And people who think like that, like, I think they deserve to have people like me up here on YouTube calling them out for it. I really do. I think she should be shamed and blamed drastically because that's obviously what it was. Like, come on, he's spitting at the camera. Like, it's common sense. It's common sense. Do I think he should go around spitting on people? No, but I don't really think he spit on the person. He spit at the camera. He spit at the camera. And being a videographer, she was holding the camera. If she didn't think that was a risk, I don't know. I really don't. I guess, you know what she was offended at? I seriously think this whole thing started because he didn't apologize to her. Because he probably thinks like I do. What'd you think was going to happen? It's a Marilyn Manson concert, boo. Like, you want me to apologize for being me, for doing what I normally do? Like, what? And then she got offended. I think a lot of that is this. When you won't apologize for who you are because you're not doing anything wrong, and people are just like, well, wait a minute, but I feel a certain way about this. They get really offended, and they just get in their little righteous mobiles and make all kinds of silly mistakes and let us all point and laugh at it like we are this videographer, because I really don't feel bad for her at all. I don't either. I don't think she was traumatized in any way. No. And I would like to see more people come forward if she's filed more of these lawsuits. She does need a little shaming. She really does. Yeah. So
She said in her statement that it was the worst, most disgusting thing that any human has ever done.
wait a minute. Are you telling me in her whole life her neighbor's dog never shit in her yard? Wait, are you
Yeah.
kidding me, Kelly? Really?
He's
Like,
laying it on a little thick.
it's the worst. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh God. No, actually, I'm not sorry. I'm not even going to say I'm
Like,
sorry for laughing
that's
at it.
the worst, most disgusting thing ever done in all of humanity. A little bit of spit at a camera lens.
With all the
Okay.
things in the world that are going on, that
Right.
like what I would have to say, what a lovely life she's had. I really do. Like, wow,
Hmm. If
that's
that is the
impressive.
worst thing that's ever happened to you, she must be leading a pretty charmed life.
Yeah, she never walked out of the house and had the garbage bag break on the way to the can. Like, come on. You never
Yeah,
like
that's gross. That's
you
gross business.
it's like, right, your neighbor's dog never came and did his business in your yard, like whatever. You never
Hmm.
had a bird go by and drop anything on you,
Yeah.
really? Or sit on a bench and absent-mindedly where birds have been. Nothing, really? Nothing like this has ever happened to you. These are all things that happen to everybody, like every day. Like, I don't know. Maybe not all at once, but you guys get what I mean. Like, come on. This is the worst thing that ever happened to her. Hmm. I think
Oh.
not getting any money for it is probably the worst thing that ever happened to her, because this is definitely, she's doing it for the attention and
Hmm.
payout, for sure. Yeah. So, and she probably mad because she didn't, she doesn't get that money, does she? That goes to the court system, the fine, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah, so they didn't fine in her favor to give her any money. So
Yeah, it goes to the
Juju, I
courts.
don't even think she got her dry cleaning paid for. I told her this is probably why she's filing
Right.
a civil suit, because she still don't have anything. Like, she still don't have her 15
Her
minutes.
civil suit is really comical if you read through it.
Mhm.
She calls it the bodily fluid attack and every salacious term you could come up with to really
Wait, Kelly,
describe.
the bodily fluid attack. She's trying to make it
Hmm.
sensationalism, like as if he, you know, did something else.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's, I mean,
But she's not playing to the media, right, Kelly?
no,
No,
yeah.
no, no, that's not playing to the media where it's like that. Oh, wow. Wow. I don't know. Listen, wow. Is there any, or before we wrap up, we've been talking for 2 hours. It's such a pleasure to talk. I could probably sit here for another 8,
I
actually,
know.
and talk to you. But rather than I'd rather keep them wanting than
Right.
drive them all away. So if I asked you if there's anything with this platform that you would want people to take away from this conversation now, what would it be in regards to everything that's going on with Marilyn Manson?
Well, just in general, with any of these cases, I just would ask for anybody to use critical thinking. But I also am a huge believer in transparency, especially because we know the media likes to cherry pick stuff.
Mm-hmm,
So that's why I, on my website, do make available all the court documents that I purchase,
mm-hmm,
because I honestly feel like here within the US, we could do a better job of educating people on what the legal system is like or what court documents are like and that kind of
mm-hmm.
thing. So it's just valuable to read through them anyway, but they're all available and share them, that kind of thing. And then, yeah, the trial starts next week. So
Yeah. So if
we'll
you're
see.
we'll definitely see. I'm going to
Well,
put the website again down here because everything's here. The link to her podcast, and I do believe you have a podcast tomorrow, don't you? The
mhm.
podcast is one of my favorites, actually. And this is the website. You can find the documents here, links to all of her socials, which, as I said, I have to say, I really admire how you take a point and you make like a little video on it and you show the evidence and you say what you got to say, but you show where you're coming from and you're using the legal documents and or the actual
Mhm.
articles that are coming out about it. Um, in a way that like I kind of do the same thing up here, like for an hour or whatever, when I'm doing my true crime weekly, but you're doing it like every day, just hammering it in as it happens. It is so time consuming and you're so good at it. And I have to say, I truly think
Oh,
one of
thank
the
you.
best sources for actual, here's some facts, but think what you will, people. Like she's not trying to tell you, think this, do that. She's like,
Right.
here's what happened. Here's what I think. What do you think? And almost all the time you're asking, what do you guys think about that? Like, what do you think's going on here? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to say, keep it up. I'm so glad that you're out
Oh,
there too.
thank you.
Especially with a case like this, which is so hard to wrap our minds around. There were so many different pieces of it. Without yourself and some of the other accounts that are actually like, please, people, look at the facts. We
Yeah.
wouldn't have the real information out there. We really would.
No. What, we'd be at the mercy of the media. They're not gonna, we've seen what they've done with Johnny Depp. They're definitely not gonna circle back and say, okay, guys, we were wrong with the Marilyn Manson thing. Like, no, they're not gonna do that.
Saying they're wrong with the Johnny Depp. They're still
No.
out there to this saying
Exactly.
you're a woman speaking against Amber Heard. You're against victims. Like I hear that every day still because of all my coverage with Johnny Depp. I'm sorry, I looked at the evidence. She didn't prove a damn thing.
No.
And he did. And we were talking like that even before the case was finished because we saw all that out and not even all the evidence got in that he had, you know. But we watched everything get debunked, everything get pulled aside. Like it, I want victims to be able to come forward in the proper way. But I'm not going to sit here and say believe everything everybody says. I didn't believe it as soon as she said he was guilty. I didn't believe that any more than he said he was innocent until we looked at it all.
Right.
Okay. You can't, you know, if he's innocent until proven guilty, then she is not a victim until she comes forward with something. Okay.
Exactly.
What we need to provide them is the space to tell their stories, to come out and use the system to protect themselves and get it out there. But you're not helping victims with this media trial stuff. Like, and we have to push back against it or it's going to keep happening. If they don't get called out for it, real victims are going to get hurt. Real victims are going to get their ability to actually come forward delayed. Like it's not right. It's damaging. I really think that
it is, and that's why it's great that your accounts like yours exist. I obviously do what I do, but I read a lot of different cases, and sometimes I think, why do I follow so many different cases? And I think, you know what? I think it's because the court of law is, as imperfect as it may be, still based in reality. Like facts speak there. I can't say that about the media anymore, which is very sad. But you know, it's like the one thing that we do still have is if you make claims, you have to bring those claims to court, and the rules of evidence are there. And I think that's a really, it's a testament to democracy that's kind of stood the test of time, because we've had this system for a really long time, and it's amazing that it keeps working, because there are cases where it's, the jury may get it wrong or whatnot, but it seems like largely the system does work. It's slow, painfully slow. Accusations like these slow it down even more if you're coming with meritless claims. But the court of law is, it requires a lot more than Rolling Stone does. I'll say that.
It sure does. Or Variety or
Right.
Disney or any of them. Like I would say, which we used to, like, for things like, you would think Marilyn Manson, that they would be a little more on the side of like equal opportunity as far as, with all of that. But I've been seeing them fall under the pressure and just regurgitating a lot of stuff that was really disappointing for me.
Yeah.
On the point of law, there's so many out there. Like we got all these legal channels that cover stuff, and they do it from a different perspective. But I think it's important that the everyday voice, like yours and mine, is out here trying to help explain some of what we're seeing and doing to everybody else, because what I've learned in my chat is they do all want to talk about it. They do want to hear about it.
Yeah, I
They
think it's
kind of
great. I
they
think it's
kind of
great
get
that
lost.
everyone's here.
Yeah, yeah.
The,
They
the
get
work,
lost with the
yeah,
legal, and just seeing the everyday perspective on it. And what can we expect though? Now, LA, that's closed camera. There's no way there's cameras in this suit like that's happening. Uh,
no.
Even though it's civil, not criminal, there's still it's all closed. So
Hmm.
what we should be expecting some media like stuff coming through. But I'll I'll put this out there. I'll bet you only from the plaintiff's side. Like we're not going to hear the sensational evidence that gets presented by Marilyn
Oh,
Manson,
oh,
aka
yeah.
Brian Warner, unless we start listening to these others accounts like
Hmm.
Uncanceled and Justin from Manson from Kelly. So watch the Twitters, the Instagrams, and for the documents, actually watch the
Yeah.
website, the podcast, and just get more than one source, people, because I could see there's going to be a media onslaught for the other way right now. Unless, of course,
Yeah.
they hold right before trial. Do you think? What do you think? The last question I have for you is: what do you think the chances are that Chloe Chloe Black will either rescind her suit or settle?
I
Tell me.
think my gut feeling is that she wants to settle because I think this could end badly for her. And I don't know, just reading the court documents, especially the ones that were filed today, just
Mhm.
as hard as Marilyn Manson's legal team is coming out, like it kind of seems like they're like, bring it, bring it.
They're ready,
But I mean, we'll see what happens. I know there's last minute settlements that take place in cases all the time.
especially civil. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
Do you think that we should hear about whether the witnesses in Marilyn's testimony will be, or Brian's testimony actually will be allowed? We'll hear about that soon. We
Yeah.
should hear
Yeah.
about any day, right? Like this week, we'd hope,
Mm-hmm.
because they have to
Yes.
prepare. And so we'll be doing an update on that. I'm sure you're going to hear from Kelly on that, all over on that as
Oh,
soon as that comes
yes.
out. But
Absolutely.
if they allow the witnesses and his testimony, if that gets slapped back, which I really do expect it to get slapped back by the judge, going, nope, no, absolutely, he can defend himself. Absolutely, these witnesses are appropriate. They were here. They're contesting against this, that, or the other thing. If that goes through, I really think that she will be pushing to either withdraw or settle. They'll be making a deal
Mm-hmm.
because they're adamantly do not want these text messages of her glowing references to
Mm-hmm.
Ryan and their relationship up there while she was being tied up in a room that doesn't exist.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about the Manson cases is, all the women were buddies. So they're called upon. So Manson has within his hands all these text messages from all of these different cases he's had in discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all in cahoots with one another. And it just perfectly feeds into his bigger case against Evan Rachel Wood, which is not going to be coming to trial anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems more and more like he has a chance of actually prevailing just based off the weight of evidence.
I think so too, because all of those text messages there, and actually Chloe Black's got a big issue if this does go all the way to court, because her own affidavit contests that those didn't exist, and he's got the
Mm-hmm.
proof that they did. She actually put a small statement into court that
Yeah.
she talked to him before this time or that time, and there's tons of evidence, even in the other cases
Mm-hmm.
that are already filed, legal documents that prove that she did. And so that's really iffy. I mean, she's lost a lot of credibility there. If the jury is not going to be very pleased about something like that, once you're
No.
proven a liar in court, you get looked at like kind of sideways for the rest of your testimony. I'm sorry. All
Mm-hmm.
he has to do is show those text messages, and that's why they're fighting so hard to keep all of this out. And that is probably why, and I'll say it because I know some people hesitate to, but I want you to look at the fact that why is the LAPD, why are they actually, with all the confiscation of his technology, why are they not offering him a copy of it through the cloud or anything to defend himself? Why are they
Mm-hmm.
keeping his own information from him to defend himself so strongly?
Mm-hmm.
because it may just prove that there's nothing here. Okay. And
And I mean, if he wins, which I don't want to make, I'm somebody that never wants to get too far ahead of myself, but if he wins, it would really be a major victory because he is coming into trial in a county working against him with a judge that has already ruled against him multiple times because of, the DA holding on to his property and not giving him access to any of it.
right.
And for him to be able to walk into a courtroom, if he walks away with a verdict in his favor, that's pretty significant.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Because they're throwing everything. You're right. It does look like Chloe Black and her legal team are very concerned about the evidence. They're trying to keep everything out that they can. They're kind of panicking right now from what it looks like. The filing. Those filings are a mess, aren't they, Kelly? Like
they are a mess.
Oh man, they're human. I would say this: if you guys read them, like, don't have anything in your mouth, because I spit more coffee reading.
Yeah,
it was like, what?
I mean, maybe get some popcorn. It is.
Yeah, it is
it's
popcorn
kind of comical.
worthy.
Yeah,
popcorn worthy. But watch if you're drinking anything, because there will be
right.
There'll be spillage.
There'll be spit. There'll be spit.
Because you just can't help it. And a lot of humor. Keep your humor. Like, you're gonna go what, and your head's gonna turn. Like, I should put a counter meter on how many times you guys like turn your heads over when you read them, because I think my average was at least 20. Like, I kind of had a good neck when I was done. But I'd had such a good time, Kelly. Like, I really could keep going, but I don't want to keep. I want you to come back. I want you to come back.
Yeah, we'll do this again. Yeah.
I'm going to be doing Manson. I do them at least now, with everything heating up, at least once a month, and it's probably going to get quicker the more this stuff happens in court.
Well, yeah, let's plan to do it again. We can have an update because unfortunately I don't think the LA Evan Rachel Wood case is going to be over anytime soon. So I think we do have a road ahead of us.
We definitely do, and I hope that this one, like, we get through this close, and we will see what else happens. But we've got plenty of other stuff, because you and I are on the same page with a lot of this, and we were on the same page with Deb. We're definitely on the same page with this one, and now with Russell Brand, that I'm just finding out how interested you are in that. So everyone here knows I am very keen on the damage that was done there. I covered that Masterson trial.
Yes.
And I'm still appalled at how Scientology is still trying to spin it, that these were like, and if that doesn't prove that we really are for the victims, I don't know what is. Like, just because in Johnny Depp I was against Amber Heard, when you talk about Masterson, I was not waving a flag for Masterson.
No, I was not either.
And it was because of the statute of limitations. I was actually happy that in LA, that Mueller was able to use this law to bring forward the case, even though Scientology tried to bury it repeatedly, not only in their own church, but even afterwards, when they went forward and finally got to Los Angeles and filed their complaints. Okay, they were tried to bury them over and over and over again, and it's just wrong. It was just wrong. So I'm glad that we have plenty to talk about in the future. So everybody, check out that live pod. I don't know if the podcast comes out in a couple of days. I know you're working on it. There is one. You just did one.
There's one on the spit, which is entertaining, and I actually had Ilma Gore's sister on there, who she does not have very nice things to say about her sister, by the way.
And she's a twin. She knows.
Yeah.
Like, she knows about this. Okay.
Yeah.
When your own twin is willing to testify, but they don't want the twin to testify, you really should be looking at that. Like,
yeah. It's bad when your own twin sister is like, you know what? I'm going to go testify for Marilyn Manson.
And I do hope that they find a way to get that testimony and everything, all of that in with the iPad, the whole thing, because the sister, if I remember correctly, she laid out a lot of what they saw
Mhm.
as far as how this presented with making of the FBI letter.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing with the judge. Obviously, I think the judge overlooked some things with striking the FBI letter, because she struck it from Evan Rachel Wood, because she was saying this letter was only filed in court when it wasn't. It was filed in the press.
It was,
So
which
with
I think he's got a good case there, because
Mhm.
it was filed in court and it was family court, and I can see where she's protecting, since family court didn't do anything about it as far as the legalities of it or this, that, or the other thing. She did have some precedent there to keep it out because of the
Mhm.
family court issue part there, and that this actual case is not about the family court case, and they really don't want to
Right.
bring that in. However, that's valid, and everybody needs to look at that fair point. Evan Rachel was posted that letter to smear
Mhm.
Brian Warner. No
Yeah,
doubt
and it
about
has
it.
her own
Publicly.
attorney's insignia and everything on it.
Mhm. And it came
So
from them. They posted it out there, which
Mhm.
he should be able to add that to the case. And if he has to amend the claim to include it, which Howard King's pretty smart. I'm sure they're all working on it. That they will get that in. I hope that they do get it back
Yeah.
in there, because that whole process of how that letter came about proves the Elmer Gore, Evan Rachel Woods working on getting this documentary to be like the best it can be, and which is a very
Mhm.
cornerstone of Brian's case, is that this was an organized conspiracy against me.
Yeah.
And I think he's got a point. So I hope they do that. But anyway, I'm going to let you go.
Yeah, I
Everybody,
know. Thanks
thank you
everyone
so
for
much.
listening. Thank
Yes,
you,
thank you so
Claire.
much. And I'm going to put the outro on. Thank you, everybody in the chat. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you hit up that website, and make sure you hit up all of Kelly's socials. If you're not following her, you should be, if you're interested in this case, because that's where you're going to get the real deal every time. And on that,
Mhm.
thank you, moderators, and everybody have a good one. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Kelly.
so much, everyone.